The early morning sun streamed through the tall glass windows of Frederick Michael's luxurious penthouse, painting the polished marble floors in golden light. The billionaire had just stepped out of the bathroom, a white towel hanging loosely around his waist, droplets of water still glistening on his muscular chest. He ran a hand through his damp hair, sighing as steam followed him into the room. At that exact moment, a soft knock came on the door. "Sir, your breakfast," a gentle female voice called. Frederick's brows lifted. That must be the new maid, the one the housekeeper had mentioned yesterday. "Come in," his deep voice rumbled. The door opened slowly and Susanna Eric walked in carefully, balancing a silver tray of breakfast. She wore a simple maid's uniform, her figure graceful and modest, her big brown eyes fixed on the tray as though it were her shield. But the moment she looked up, she froze. The tray trembled in her hands, her lips parted in shock. Standing before her was her new employer, half-naked, broad-shouldered, every inch of him carved like a sculpture. Her eyes widened, her face flushing crimson. I'm sorry, sir, I didn't know." Frederick smirked slightly at her reaction, but inside, something unexpected stirred. His gaze locked on her soft features, her innocence, the way her cheeks turned red just from looking at him. His heart gave a heavy thump. "Set it down," he said, his voice lower than he intended. Susanna swallowed hard, stepping forward. The tray clinked softly as she placed it on the bedside table, her hands trembling. She dared not look at him, but she could feel his eyes burning into her every movement. As she turned to leave, her eyes accidentally caught sight of him again. His towel dangerously low on his hips, his strong chest glistening. Her breath caught. Frederick noticed. His pulse quickened. For the first time in years he felt something raw, uncontrollable. His body reacted instantly, betraying him. He quickly shifted, but his heart hammered louder. She looked away, her lips pressing tightly as if to hide her fluster. Frederick spoke, his voice unusually gentle. "You must be Susanna, the new maid?" "Yes, sir," she whispered, clutching her apron. "I am sorry for disturbing you." "You didn't disturb me." His eyes lingered. "God, why her? Why now?" For a man who had women at his feet, models, socialites, heiresses, Frederick Michael had never felt this kind of pull. But with this maid, this fragile young woman who could barely hold his gaze, his heart stirred. His control slipped. As Susanna reached for the door, her hands shaking, Frederick's voice stopped her. "Susanna." She froze. Slowly she turned her head, her eyes wide, waiting. His lips curved into a faint smile. "Welcome to my home." She managed a nervous nod, her chest rising and falling too quickly. Then she slipped out of the room, closing the door behind her. Frederick stood still, staring at the door long after she was gone. His towel hung low, his heartbeat thundered. For the first time in his life, the untouchable billionaire realized something terrifying. He wanted her. Not for a night. Not as a fleeting desire. But deeply, dangerously. The rest of the morning went by in restless silence for Frederick Michael. He sat at the edge of his bed, untouched breakfast before him, his mind haunted by the image of wide brown eyes and trembling hands. Susanna Eric. The name alone stirred something he couldn't name. He had met countless women, elegant socialites, ambitious models, women who threw themselves at him for his wealth and status, but none had unsettled him the way she did. A maid. His maid. This is madness, he told himself, pulling on a crisp navy suit. Yet his chest tightened with anticipation at the thought of seeing her again. Downstairs, Susanna carried a stack of freshly laundered linens into the grand hallway. Her heart still raced from the morning encounter. She had seen him, her boss, her billionaire employer, nearly unclothed, powerful and breathtaking in ways she dared not admit even to herself. Her cheeks warmed just remembering the scene. Susanna, the head housekeeper, called, snapping her back to reality. "Take these flowers to the study. Mr. Michael likes fresh arrangements every day." "Yes, ma'am," Susanna murmured, clutching the glass vase carefully. Her steps echoed softly as she entered the study. The room smelled faintly of leather and cedar, with towering bookshelves lining the walls. And there, seated behind a mahogany desk, was Frederick Michael himself. She froze again, clutching the vase a little tighter. Frederick looked up from the documents in his hand. The moment his eyes found hers, his pen stilled. That same jolt shot through him. He cleared his throat, forcing composure. "You can put them there," he said, gesturing toward a side table. "Yes, sir," she whispered, her voice betraying her nerves. She moved swiftly, but her steps faltered when she felt his gaze burning into her. Her fingers trembled, nearly spilling water from the vase. "Careful," Frederick said, his deep voice softer this time. He rose from his chair, his height overwhelming as he approached. Susanna set the vase down quickly and stepped back. "Forgive me, sir. I didn't mean." "You're nervous," Frederick interrupted gently. Her lashes fluttered as she looked anywhere but at him. I just don't want to make a mistake." Frederick studied her. Up close, he saw the faint freckles across her nose, the natural shine of her skin, the innocence in her eyes. Something about her vulnerability struck him harder than any beauty queen ever had. He caught himself staring. Too long. Too intensely. "Susanna," he said quietly, his tone dropping into something unfamiliar even to him. "Do you know how rare it is for someone to make me feel unsettled?" Her lips parted, confusion flickering across her face. "Sir?" Frederick exhaled, pulling back slightly, regaining his composure. "You shouldn't say more." He couldn't. She was his maid. Boundaries existed for a reason. "Nothing," he muttered, turning back toward his desk. "You may go." Susanna's heart pounded in her chest as she nodded quickly. She turned to leave, but as she touched the doorknob, his voice called her back, low, firm, yet laced with something dangerous. "Susanna." She glanced back nervously. His eyes locked with hers, dark and intense. "Be careful around me." She swallowed, her breath shaky. "Yes, sir." And then she slipped out, leaving Frederick alone once again. His jaw clenched, his chest rising and falling with the effort of restraint. Because what he felt for her wasn't simply attraction. It was hunger. Dangerous, consuming hunger. The mansion seemed to breathe with silence that evening. A soft drizzle pattered against the tall windows, and the golden glow of the chandeliers cast a warm hush over the hallways. Frederick Michael sat in the lounge, a glass of whiskey untouched on the table beside him. He had been reading the same page of a business report for the last 20 minutes, but his mind refused to focus. All he could see was Susanna's trembling hands, her wide eyes, the innocence that clung to her like a second skin. He cursed under his breath, setting the papers aside. He was a man of control, a man who had built empires and commanded respect, but here he was, undone by a maid. Susanna sat quietly in the staff quarters, folding sheets with distracted fingers. Her mind wandered to the way Frederick had looked at her earlier in the study, intense as though he could see through her. That look had left her both frightened and strangely warmed. Her hands stilled when a memory flashed, him calling her name, his voice deep and commanding. "Be careful around me." She pressed her palms to her chest. Why would her employer say such a thing? Why did his voice replay in her head like a song she couldn't forget? Later that night, Susanna carried a basket of fresh laundry through the main hall. The storm outside had grown heavier, raindrops racing down the glass walls, thunder grumbling in the distance. The lights flickered once, then steadied, casting long shadows across the grand staircase. Frederick appeared suddenly at the top of the stairs. He was dressed more casually now, dark trousers and a black shirt, the top 2 buttons undone. He descended slowly, his sharp eyes finding her immediately. "Still working?" His voice echoed softly in the hall. Susanna's breath caught. "Why, yes, sir. I just needed to finish the laundry." He reached the bottom step, his towering frame making her shrink slightly under his gaze. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes lingered on her longer than necessary. "Do you always push yourself this late?" he asked, stepping closer. Susanna clutched the basket tighter. I don't mind. Keeps me busy." Frederick tilted his head, studying her as though she were a puzzle. The storm outside rumbled, a flash of lightning illuminating the space between them. For a moment, neither spoke. "You don't have to pretend with me," Frederick finally said, his tone softer now. "I saw you earlier. You were shaking. Nervous." Her lips parted, but no words came. She felt exposed under his gaze as though he could read every secret she held. She swallowed hard. "I'm just not used to men like you." His brow arched. "Men like me?" She lowered her eyes. "Powerful. Intimidating. Someone like me doesn't belong in your world." Frederick's chest tightened. He took another step closer, until the faint scent of his cologne reached her. His voice dropped, deep and husky. "Don't ever say that again." Her eyes flew up to his, startled. "You belong wherever you choose to belong, Susanna," he continued, his gaze burning into hers. "Don't let anyone, not even yourself, tell you otherwise." The storm roared outside, thunder shaking the windows, but all Susanna could hear was the pounding of her own heart. His words sank into her, dangerous and sweet. The laundry basket slipped slightly from her grip. Frederick's hand shot out, steadying it, and brushing against her fingers. The touch was brief, accidental, yet it sent fire coursing through them both. They froze, staring at each other. Frederick's jaw tightened as he withdrew his hand, forcing distance. His voice was rough when he finally spoke. "Go rest, Susanna." She nodded quickly, clutching the basket to her chest as though it could protect her from the storm raging inside her. She hurried toward the staff wing, but before she disappeared, she glanced back once. Frederick still stood there, his dark figure bathed in shadow, his eyes fixed on her like a man fighting a war within himself. And in that moment, Susanna knew something dangerous had begun. The storm outside had calmed by the next evening, leaving the air cool and fresh. The mansion glowed warmly against the night, chandeliers casting soft golden halos across its vast rooms. Frederick Michael sat in his private library, a glass of brandy in his hand, though he had barely touched it. Books surrounded him, but none could hold his attention. His thoughts wandered again and again to Susanna, the way she blushed, the way her hands trembled, the way she looked at him as if she wanted to run and stay at the same time. His jaw tightened. "This is wrong. She's your maid." But another voice whispered louder, "She's more than that. She's the only one who makes you feel alive." Meanwhile, Susanna Eric moved quietly through the upper hall, dusting the polished surfaces. Her uniform clung gently to her figure as she reached upward, her bun loosening slightly, a few strands of dark hair falling against her face. She bit her lip, remembering his words from last night. "Don't ever say you don't belong." The memory made her chest ache. She shouldn't think of him. He was her employer, a man far above her reach. And yet, the sound of his voice, the fire in his eyes, haunted her. Her steps brought her toward the library. She paused at the door, balancing the duster in her hand. She needed to check the room before retiring for the night. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open. Frederick looked up immediately. The moment their eyes met, the air thickened. "You're still working?" His voice was low, smooth. Susanna nodded nervously. "Just finishing up, sir." She moved to dust the shelves, keeping her gaze away from him. But Frederick's gaze refused to leave her. The sight of her in his space, so close, so fragile, made his chest tighten painfully. He set his glass down with a soft clink and rose from his chair. "Susanna," he said, his voice carrying an edge she had never heard before. She froze, her duster clutched tightly in her hand. Slowly she turned. Frederick stood only a few feet away, tall and powerful, yet his eyes burned with something vulnerable. He stepped closer, each stride heavy with tension. "You make it very hard for me to breathe," he confessed, his voice rough. Her lips parted in shock. "Sir, I don't understand." "Yes, you do." His gaze locked on hers, intense, searching. "Tell me you don't feel it. Tell me I'm the only one losing my mind here." Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her pulse hammering. Every part of her screamed to run, but her feet refused. She whispered, trembling, I feel it too." That was all it took. Frederick's control shattered. He reached out, cupping her face gently but firmly, his thumb brushing her flushed cheek. Susanna gasped softly, her eyes wide, but she didn't pull away. His lips hovered over hers for a single, dangerous heartbeat, then closed the distance. The kiss was fire and surrender all at once. Deep, hungry, desperate, yet tender in a way that made her knees weaken. The duster slipped from her fingers and fell silently to the carpet as she clung to his shirt. Frederick pulled her closer, his arm wrapping around her waist as though afraid she might vanish. His heart pounded against hers, every beat screaming that this woman was different, that she had broken every wall he had built around himself. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Susanna's eyes shone with tears she didn't understand. "Sir, this is wrong," she whispered. Frederick pressed his forehead against hers, his voice a raw confession. "Everything about you feels right." Silence filled the room, broken only by the sound of their breathing and the faint patter of rain outside. And in that silence, both of them knew there was no turning back. The next morning, the mansion hummed with its usual rhythm, maids scurrying through halls, chefs working in the kitchen, and the sound of polished shoes on marble floors. But for Frederick and Susanna, the world had shifted forever. Susanna avoided his gaze at breakfast. She served his coffee silently, her hands steady, though her heart beat wildly beneath her uniform. Every time she glanced at him, memories of the kiss from last night burned her cheeks. Frederick, however, didn't hide. He let his eyes linger openly, unapologetically, watching the way she moved, the way her lips pressed together nervously. He no longer saw her as just a maid. She was the woman who had cracked open his heart. When the butler entered with papers, Frederick snapped back into the role of the composed billionaire. But the moment they were alone again, his mask slipped. "Susanna," he said softly. She froze, turning slowly, the silver tray still in her hands. Yes, sir? His lips curved into a faint smile. How much longer are you going to keep pretending nothing happened? Her breath caught. We can't talk about that. Please. You know this is wrong. Frederick rose from the table, his steps deliberate as he closed the distance between them. He towered over her, his hazel eyes blazing with quiet intensity. Wrong? Maybe. But I don't care. She tried to step back, but his hand brushed hers, steadying the tray she nearly dropped. Electricity jolted through her at the brief touch. I've never felt this way before, Susanna, he whispered, voice rough. Not with anyone. Her chest tightened. She should push him away, but instead, her heart betrayed her, aching for him. Later that evening, Frederick found her in the rose garden, trimming the flowers. The sun was dipping low, casting the sky in orange and pink flames. Susanna hummed softly, unaware he was watching from the veranda. He approached slowly, his presence making her stiffen. She turned, flustered. Sir, I was just finishing. Stop calling me sir, he interrupted gently. Her eyes widened. But, Frederick, he said, his voice low, tender. When we're alone, call me Frederick. The way he spoke his own name made her heart quiver. She lowered her eyes. Frederick, she whispered, testing the sound. His chest tightened at the way her voice wrapped around his name like a secret. He reached out, taking the shears from her trembling hands. Let me. Their fingers brushed again. This time neither pulled away. Days turned into weeks, and their stolen moments grew bolder. A touch on the staircase railing as they passed. A fleeting kiss stolen in the shadows of the hall. Long conversations in the library after midnight, where Frederick listened to her dreams and fears with a heart that no business empire had ever moved. Susanna found herself laughing again, glowing in ways she hadn't in years. And Frederick, once a man surrounded by power and wealth but drowning in loneliness, finally felt alive. But with each kiss, each secret glance, the danger of discovery grew sharper. And neither of them knew how long they could keep their forbidden love hidden from the eyes of the world. The days of secrecy melted into weeks. What began as stolen touches and whispered confessions had grown into nights of passion and mornings of quiet tenderness. Frederick Michael was no longer just a billionaire lost in his wealth. He was a man in love, risking everything for Susanna Eric. But love always carried consequences. Susanna had been feeling strange for days. At first, she ignored it, dizzy spells while dusting, sudden fatigue in the middle of chores, waves of nausea that left her weak. She told herself it was exhaustion. The mansion's endless tasks could wear anyone down. But deep inside, fear whispered. One morning, as she arranged fresh roses in the dining hall, the scent overwhelmed her. She dropped the vase with a crash, glass shattering across the marble floor. Frederick, who had just entered, rushed forward. Susanna. His strong hands caught her arms before she could collapse. Her skin was pale, her body trembling. I'm fine, she murmured, trying to stand, but her knees buckled. No, you're not. His voice was commanding but laced with worry. He lifted her effortlessly, carrying her toward the private lounge. His heart hammered with panic. Later that day, Frederick summoned his private physician. Susanna sat nervously on a plush chair, her uniform wrinkled, her hands twisted in her lap. Frederick stood beside her, refusing to leave her side. The doctor, a kind elderly man, checked her pulse, asked questions, and finally gave a small smile. Congratulations, he said softly. You're expecting. The words echoed like thunder. Susanna froze, her eyes wide, her breath caught in her throat. Her trembling hands pressed against her stomach. Frederick blinked, stunned, his chest tightening. She's pregnant? His voice was rough, disbelieving. Yes. 2 months, perhaps, the doctor replied before gathering his things and leaving discreetly. Silence filled the room after the door closed. Tears welled in Susanna's eyes. Frederick, this can't be happening. I can't. What will people say? I'll lose everything. Oh. Frederick silenced her panic with a firm but tender grip on her hands. His hazel eyes, usually sharp and commanding, now glistened with raw emotion. Susanna, listen to me, he said, his voice low but steady. This child is ours. And I don't care what anyone thinks. Her tears spilled, her voice breaking. But I'm just your maid. I don't belong in your world. They'll laugh at me, at us. No, he interrupted fiercely, pulling her into his arms. You belong with me. You always have. Don't you understand? You've given me something no one else ever could. You've given me a reason to live, to fight, to love. And now, you've given me a child. Susanna buried her face against his chest, sobbing softly as his hand stroked her hair. Frederick held her as though he would never let go, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "I'll protect you," he whispered, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I'll protect both of you. No matter the cost. You're mine, Susanna. And so is this child." For the first time, despite her fears, Susanna felt a fragile peace wash over her. The road ahead would be hard, but in Frederick's arms she was no longer alone. And in that moment, a forbidden love turned into an unbreakable bond, sealed by the tiny life growing inside her. The news spread faster than Frederick had anticipated. In a mansion where whispers carried farther than footsteps, it was impossible to keep Susanna's pregnancy a secret. The household staff had noticed her morning sickness, the way Frederick lingered near her, too protective, too tender. And soon rumors began to swirl like wildfire. By the time it reached Frederick's business circle, wealthy partners, arrogant investors, and high-class socialites, it became scandal. One evening, Frederick hosted a dinner in his glass-walled penthouse suite overlooking the city. The table gleamed with silverware, crystal glasses, and fine wine. His guests wore designer suits and glittering gowns, their laughter loud and artificial. But the moment Susanna entered with a tray of wine, silence fell. She wore her maid's uniform, her beauty understated, her figure softer now with the early bloom of pregnancy. Her eyes lowered, trying to remain invisible. Yet she felt the weight of their stares, the disapproval, the scorn, the cruel curiosity. One of the men leaned toward Frederick, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Michael, tell us this isn't true. A billionaire reduced to scandal with his maid?" The women at the table tittered behind jeweled hands. Another man chuckled. "Surely you'll take care of the situation before it ruins your reputation." Susanna froze, her heart hammering, her cheeks burning with shame. But Frederick's chair scraped against the marble floor as he stood, his jaw set like steel. His hazel eyes swept the table, his voice sharp and commanding. "Be careful with your words." The room fell silent. He walked toward Susanna, taking the tray gently from her trembling hands and setting it aside. Then, without hesitation, he slid his arm around her waist. "This woman," he declared, his voice deep and steady, "is not my scandal. She is my choice, my heart, the mother of my child." Gasps rippled around the table. Frederick's gaze hardened as he looked at his stunned guests. "If anyone here thinks less of me for loving her, then you don't belong in my life, or my business." The weight of his words cut through the tension like a blade. Some looked away in shame, others in disbelief. But Susanna's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, someone had defended her, not just anyone but the man the world bowed to. Later, when the guests had left, Susanna stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring at the glittering city below. Her hands cradled her stomach, her heart torn between fear and awe. Frederick approached silently, sliding his arms around her from behind. He pressed his lips to her hair, his voice soft but firm. "Don't ever doubt your place in my life," he whispered. "You and this child are my future. No one else matters." Her tears slipped freely down her cheeks as she turned in his arms. "I'm afraid, Frederick. Afraid the world will never accept me. That they'll laugh at our child." He tilted her chin up, his hazel eyes glowing with fierce devotion. "Then let them laugh. Their opinions mean nothing. I will shield you from every storm, Susanna. I'd burn down the world before I let it hurt you." And as his lips claimed hers in a kiss that silenced her doubts, Susanna realized that no amount of gossip, scandal, or wealth could compete with the truth. She had his love. And in his love she had everything. The night air was warm, scented with roses. Fairy lights glowed softly in the private garden behind Frederick Michael's mansion, where the world felt quiet as though holding its breath. Susanna, now visibly carrying his child, wore a flowing pale pink gown that shimmered in the glow of the lights. Her soft brown skin gleamed like silk, her hair pinned back loosely, and her dark eyes sparkled with curiosity as Frederick led her deeper into the garden. He stopped beneath an arch of roses and turned to her. The normally confident billionaire suddenly looked nervous, his hazel eyes unsteady as he reached into his pocket. Then, with a deep breath, Frederick sank to one knee. "Susanna Eric," he said, his voice low and trembling. "From the moment you walked into my room with that tray of breakfast, I knew you were different. You made my heart beat in ways I never thought possible. You've given me more than love. You've given me a reason to live fully. Will you marry me and be mine forever?" Tears flooded Susanna's eyes as she pressed both hands to her mouth. She felt her knees weaken, her heart race, and her soul tremble. No one had ever looked at her the way Frederick did now, with both reverence and passion. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, Frederick. I will." Frederick slipped a diamond ring onto her finger, his hands shaking slightly, before rising to pull her into his arms. Their kiss beneath the rose arch sealed not just their engagement but the promise of a new life. The wedding came weeks later, held in a grand cathedral that stood like a castle of light. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, painting the floors with colors of heaven. Guests filled the pews, whispering in awe as the doors opened and Susanna appeared. She wore a white lace gown that flowed around her like a river of light, a veil cascading down her back. Her growing belly was visible, and rather than shame, it filled her with pride. Every step she took toward the altar was a step into a future she never dreamed she could have. Frederick stood waiting in a black tuxedo, his hazel eyes fixed only on her. His chest rose and fell heavily as though he couldn't believe she was real, walking toward him. When she finally reached him, Frederick took her hands. His voice shook with emotion as he vowed, "I promise to love you, protect you and cherish you, for us, for the life we've created together." Tears streamed down Susanna's cheeks as she whispered her vows. "I promise to stand by you no matter what the world says. You are my heart, Frederick, my forever." The priest declared them husband and wife, and when Frederick kissed Susanna, the cathedral erupted in applause. Guests rose to their feet, throwing rose petals into the air, their cheers echoing against the high ceilings. Outside, the sun bathed the couple in golden light as they stepped into their new life together. Frederick kissed her forehead as Susanna rested her head on his shoulder, one hand cradling her belly. For the first time she felt truly safe. That evening, as they stood on the mansion balcony watching the sunset, Frederick whispered, "Our story isn't a fairy tale, Susanna. It's better. It's real. And it's forever." And with their unborn child between them and love wrapped around them like armor, they knew they had found their happily ever after. The mansion that once felt too large and silent now pulsed with new life. The nursery smelled faintly of baby powder and fresh linen, its cream-colored walls glowing in the soft morning light. Susanna Michael, her brown skin radiant and her dark eyes tender with joy, sat in a rocking chair. She wore a simple pastel blue gown, her hair falling loosely around her shoulders as she cradled a tiny newborn girl wrapped in a white blanket. The baby's little hands curled, her soft breaths filling the room with the sweetest sound Susanna had ever known. The door creaked and Frederick stepped in. No longer the untouchable billionaire in a suit, he wore a plain white shirt with rolled sleeves and dark trousers. His hazel eyes softened instantly as he looked at his wife and child. He crossed the room quietly and knelt beside Susanna, reaching out to touch the baby's tiny fingers. His large hand trembled slightly as her little fist wrapped around one of his fingers. A tear slipped down his cheek and Susanna smiled through her own tears. "She has your eyes," Susanna whispered. "And your smile," Frederick replied, his voice thick with emotion. He leaned down, kissing Susanna's forehead, then brushing his lips against their daughter's soft head. "She's the proof of our love." Later, as the sun began to set, the three of them stood on the mansion's balcony. Susanna leaned against Frederick's chest, their baby sleeping soundly in her arms. The city skyline glittered in the distance, but for Frederick, the real treasure was right here in his arms. "Our forever starts now," he murmured. And in that golden hour light, with love binding them together and their child symbolizing a future they never dreamed possible, their story found its true happily ever after. True love isn't found in wealth or status. It blooms where hearts choose each other even against the odds. Strength is not in hiding your scars, but in standing tall with them, knowing they make your story more beautiful. Real power is not measured by money or influence, it is measured by the courage to love fearlessly. The world may whisper doubts, but the heart shouts truths louder than any crowd. Happiness begins when you stop fearing judgment and start choosing love. Sometimes the greatest victories come from the risks we take for love, not the battles we fight in business. What begins in silence can grow into a love so loud, the world can no longer ignore it. The right person doesn't just fit into your life, they transform it, filling the empty spaces with meaning. Love is not a scandal when it's real, it is a legacy. When two souls choose each other against all odds, they do not just find happiness, they create forever. If you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe for more of the story. See you again in the next story. Thank you for watching.
Amanda Okoro's shift at the prestigious Ocean Crest Hotel had already stretched longer than usual. Exhausted but determined, she made her way to room 407, a suite she was told was unoccupied. With her cleaning cart beside her and her name badge slipping sideways on her chest, she tapped gently on the door. "Housekeeping?" she called, her voice calm but tired. No answer. She swiped her keycard and pushed the door open. The room was silent, but warm, too warm. A trail of steam lingered in the air, As she stepped inside, adjusting the sheets and preparing her supplies, a soft sound made her turn. And there he was. A tall, chiseled man stood at the entrance of the bathroom, his torso bare, towel hanging low on his hips, skin still damp from a hot shower. Amanda gasped and froze, her mouth slightly open in shock. Jeff Obasi. The name crashed through her mind like a thunderbolt. Nigeria's youngest billionaire, the enigmatic CEO of Obasi Holdings. He was supposed to be in Abuja, or Paris, not half naked in front of her in Lagos. What the hell? Jeff barked, surprised and tense. Who are you? I was told the room was empty, Amanda stammered, eyes quickly lowering as she tried to back out. Jeff grabbed a robe from a nearby chair and slipped it on, still staring at her. You just barge into rooms without checking. I knocked, sir, she murmured. Twice. There was a beat of silence. Jeff's sharp expression softened just a little as he really looked at her, petite, dark-eyed, her expression filled with fear and embarrassment rather than interest or seduction. You're new here? He asked, voice calmer now. Amanda nodded. 3 weeks, sir. Please. I'll go. As she turned toward the door, his voice stopped her. What's your name? She hesitated, her heart pounding. Amanda Okoro. Jeff didn't reply. He simply watched as she disappeared through the door. But his curiosity was already lit. That Maid Amanda wasn't like the others. She didn't stare at his wealth. She didn't flirt. She looked at him like he was just a man. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Jeff Obasi paced slowly in his penthouse suite, a tumbler of sparkling water in hand. The soft hum of Lagos traffic below barely touched the silence that lingered after Amanda had fled his room earlier that day. He couldn't shake her image, the wide, terrified eyes, the humble posture, the way her voice trembled with apology. She didn't gawk at him like most women did. She didn't flirt. She didn't try to take advantage. In fact, she looked like she wished she could disappear. He liked that, maybe too much. His assistant, Victor, had just left after briefing him on a potential merger with Aura Holdings, a deal that would make Obasi Group one of the most powerful empires in Africa. But Jeff's mind was elsewhere. He pulled out his phone and called the hotel manager. That maid from this morning, the one who entered my room, Jeff said. Sir, the manager's voice was nervous. Should I dismiss her immediately? No. Jeff paused. I want to know her name. That's all. A few minutes later, a text popped up on his phone. Amanda Okoro, room service. Hired 3 weeks ago. No complaints. Lives in staff housing. Jeff stared at her name, a small smirk playing on his lips. Amanda. Amanda leaned over a guest table in the cafe lounge, wiping up spilled coffee when a deep voice made her stiffen. Careful there, sweetheart, the man at the table sneered. You almost made me burn my thigh. What kind of low-class training do they give you girls? She straightened, swallowing her anger. I'm sorry, sir. The man reached out and grabbed her wrist. Why don't you make it up to me with a smile, or something better? Amanda tried to pull away, panic rising. Please, let go. Is there a problem here? A familiar voice said coldly. The man turned. Jeff Obasi stood there, suited, powerful, and very clearly unimpressed. I was just... Jeff didn't give him a chance. Leave, now, before I have security drag you out and blacklist you from every luxury hotel in this city. The man stammered, let go of Amanda, and hurried away. Amanda stood frozen, her wrists tingling from both the man's grip and Jeff's unexpected defense. You all right? Jeff asked, his voice gentler now. She nodded slowly, barely meeting his eyes. Thank you, sir. Jeff smiled faintly. You should really stop calling me sir. Makes me feel ancient. She couldn't help it. A tiny smile escaped her lips. Okay, Mr. Obasi. He chuckled. That's worse. There was a pause. Then, surprising even himself, Jeff said, Can I buy you a coffee? Amanda blinked. Excuse me. Sit. Just 5 minutes. I owe you that much after this morning. She hesitated. But something in his voice wasn't demanding. It was sincere, curious, and maybe lonely. She sat. Over the next week, Amanda noticed strange things. Fresh towels requested from room 407 twice a day. A forgotten room service tray outside his suite. A silk tie left in the elevator. With a note for Amanda. She wasn't a fool. Jeff Obasi was creating excuses, simple, harmless reasons to see her. And each time, her stomach fluttered in a way she hated to admit. One afternoon, while restocking supplies in the linen room, Amanda found him waiting at the doorway. How do you keep showing up everywhere? She asked, folding a pillowcase. I'm a billionaire, he said dryly. We tend to be resourceful. She rolled her eyes but smiled despite herself. What do you want from me? Jeff stepped closer, serious now. To talk. to listen, to know why a girl like you walks around with the weight of the world on her shoulders. Amanda lowered her eyes. You wouldn't understand. Try me. She didn't tell him everything. Not about her sick mother or the bills piling up, but she shared just enough. That she came from Inigu. That she never went to university. That she worked hard because no one else could. Jeff didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He just listened. When she finally looked up, he was staring at her like she was something rare. I've met models, actresses, CEOs, he said, but no one who speaks like you. Amanda laughed bitterly. I speak like a girl who scrubs toilets. No, Jeff replied, his voice low. You speak like someone I want to see again. Their eyes met. The moment stretched between them like a tight string, fragile, beautiful, dangerous. Then the radio crackled on Amanda's hip. Amanda, report to laundry. Guest complaint in room 212. The spell broke. She turned away. I have to go. Jeff watched her leave, knowing this was only the beginning. And she knew, deep down, that running wouldn't be easy anymore. Amanda stared at her reflection in the darkened elevator panel, fidgeting with the borrowed dress that clung nervously to her curves. It was navy blue, a hand-me-down from a coworker, and slightly too big, but it would have to do. Her nerves were worse than ever. Jeff Obasi had invited her to the private rooftop after hours. At first, she refused outright. It was too dangerous, too scandalous. What business did a billionaire have dining with a hotel maid? But Jeff had persisted with the patience of a man used to getting what he wanted, yet careful not to frighten her away. And something in his voice, that warm, vulnerable tone, made her say yes. She stepped onto the rooftop and stopped cold. Tiny fairy lights twinkled around the terrace railings. A small table stood at the center, set with 2 plates of suya, fried plantains, and a bottle of malt. No caviar, no champagne, just comfort food for her. Jeff stood beside the table, hands in his pockets, wearing a simple black shirt rolled up at the sleeves and dark jeans. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a boy next door. You came, he said softly. I almost didn't, she replied. He pulled out a chair. Then I'm lucky. They ate in a quiet rhythm at first. Amanda slowly relaxed as they laughed about awkward hotel guests and silly childhood memories. But as the night deepened, so did the conversation. Jeff leaned forward. What's your dream, Amanda? She hesitated. To be a nurse. Open a small clinic in my village. Treat mothers like mine for free. That's noble. It's necessary, she replied. What's your dream? He looked up at the stars. To be seen as more than a wallet. That silenced her. In that moment, she saw it clearly. Behind the wealth and charm was a man aching for connection. Not business, not publicity, just realness. And Amanda, for the first time, didn't see Jeff Obasi the billionaire. She saw Jeff, just Jeff. The next day, Ocean Crest buzzed with rumors. A cleaner had spotted Amanda stepping off the rooftop elevator after midnight. Another claimed Jeff had personally requested her for room service. The whispers spread like wildfire through laundry rooms and behind staff counters. By mid-afternoon, Amanda was summoned to the supervisor's office. Miss Okoro, Mrs. Ogden said, fingers laced tightly on the desk. You're here to work, not flirt with guests. And definitely not with VIPs. I didn't, Amanda started, but was cut off. I don't want to hear it. Stay away from Mr. Obasi, or you'll lose this job. Amanda nodded, swallowing the shame burning in her throat. She knew they wouldn't understand. Heck, she didn't understand it herself. What was she doing letting a billionaire into her world? Meanwhile, Jeff faced his own storm. His assistant, Victor, slammed a file down on his desk. You're jeopardizing the Aura Holdings deal for a maid. She's not just a maid, Jeff said, voice calm but firm. You're engaged to Mr. Aura's daughter in 2 months. Your father arranged it. This is about power, legacy, not your— Victor stopped himself, then added carefully, your feelings. Jeff stood, towering over the man. Cancel the engagement. Victor blinked. What? I won't marry for power. If they pull out of the deal, fine. Let them. You're risking everything. Jeff glanced at the window. Then maybe everything isn't worth it. He didn't care what the world thought. He just knew Amanda made him feel human, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Amanda tossed in bed, unable to sleep. She hated how Jeff's face lingered in her thoughts, how his voice echoed when everything was still. The way he'd looked at her on that rooftop like she mattered. It terrified her. The knock on her door startled her upright. She checked the time. 1:03 a.m. Wrapping her robe tightly, she opened the door just a crack and froze. Jeff stood there, shirt unbuttoned, his eyes glassy from drink. Jeff, she whispered. I'm sorry, he slurred slightly. I didn't mean to scare you. I I didn't know where else to go. Aren't you supposed to be at some gala tonight? He chuckled darkly. Left early. Couldn't breathe in that world. Amanda stepped aside slowly, and he walked in, swaying slightly. He looked at her small room with a kind of awe, as if it were more real than anything in his penthouse. You're drunk, she murmured. I just needed to see you, he said. Just talk. Be here. With you? Before she could answer, he sat on the edge of her bed and dropped his head in his hands. I think I'm falling for you, Amanda. Her heart thundered. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I ever have. He lay back on her bed, staring up at the ceiling like it held the answers to his pain. Within moments, his breathing slowed. He passed out. Amanda stood frozen, torn between fear and tenderness. She walked over, pulled a thin blanket over him, and sat on the chair beside the bed, watching him sleep. Not as a billionaire, not as her boss, but as a broken man, a man who saw her, and it scared her more than anything else. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtain of Amanda's tiny staff room, casting golden streaks across the bed where Jeff Obasi stirred. His head throbbed. The light was too bright. The room was too quiet. Then it hit him. This wasn't his suite. He blinked, groaned, and slowly sat up, rubbing his temples. A blanket had been draped over his bare chest. His shoes were neatly placed beside the bed. The scent of soap and rose water hung in the air. Amanda's scent. His gaze moved to the corner, where Amanda sat silently on a plastic chair, her fingers nervously interlocked. She hadn't changed from the night before. Still wrapped in her robe, eyes wary and unreadable. What happened? He asked grudgingly. You were drunk, she said. You showed up at my door, barely able to stand. He rubbed his face. I didn't hurt you, did I? No, she replied immediately. You passed out on my bed after saying things. He looked at her. Things. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed her. You said you were falling for me. Silence. Jeff inhaled deeply. I meant it. Amanda stood abruptly, her hands trembling now. Please, don't turn this into something. He stood too, closing the distance between them. Amanda, look at me. She did, and the raw vulnerability in her eyes shook him. You don't understand, she whispered. They're watching us, talking about us. The staff is whispering, the guests are staring, and now, you're in my room. I could lose everything. So could I, Jeff said gently, but I'm still here. That's easy for you to say, she replied bitterly. You have everything, a legacy, a fortune. You'll still have a life if this explodes. I won't. That's not true, he said, stepping closer. If I lose you, I lose the only thing that's felt real in years. Amanda's chest rose and fell. Do you even hear yourself? You're a billionaire. I clean floors. You're supposed to marry the daughter of a business tycoon. I send half my salary to buy malaria drugs for my mother. I don't care, Jeff said fiercely. I don't care about money, about image, about the damn merger. All I care about is what I feel when I'm near you. Her voice broke. I don't want to be your mistake, Jeff. He reached for her hand, and for once, she didn't pull away. You're not a mistake, he whispered. You're the only thing that makes sense. Her eyes welled with tears, but she pulled away at the last second. I need time, space, please. He nodded slowly, eyes pained but understanding. Okay, but I'm not going far. I won't stop until you believe what I already know. We belong together. Jeff turned and quietly left the room, his cologne lingering in the air like a memory she couldn't wash away. Amanda sank back onto the chair, overwhelmed. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen her. But at what cost? The hotel buzzed with whispers the next morning. Staff murmured, guests stared, and phones rang nonstop in the executive offices. Jeff hadn't returned to his suite. Paparazzi were now camped outside. Ocean Crest. The news had leaked. The billionaire seen in the staff quarters. Rumors spiraled. Was it a scandal? A secret affair? Amanda tried to go about her duties, but every hallway felt like a stage. Every glance felt like a spotlight. Meanwhile, in the penthouse, Victor stormed in, phone in hand. Your mother's furious, he barked. Mr. Ora just pulled out of the merger. And the press. Let them write, Jeff said quietly, seated at his desk, staring at an old photo of his late father. I won't let my life be sold for shares. You're choosing a Maid over a $2 billion partnership. I'm choosing myself, Jeff said, rising. I've been pretending for too long. This deal, this fake engagement, this image, it's not me. Victor paused. Then what about Amanda? You think she can handle this chaos? The tabloids, the hate, the cameras. Jeff's jaw clenched. He didn't know. Downstairs, Amanda entered the laundry room to find her things already in a box. Her supervisor didn't even meet her eyes. You're being transferred. Effective immediately. Upper East Branch. Why? She asked. Because Mr. Obasi may survive a scandal, but you won't. Amanda said nothing. That night, she left the hotel quietly. No note, no goodbye, only silence. Jeff stormed into the staff wing the next morning, ignoring the stunned glances. He reached her room, locked, empty. Amanda, he shouted. Amanda, nothing. He checked the laundry room, the kitchen, the storeroom. Gone. Victor approached behind him. She left. Early this morning. Jeff stared at the ground, heart thundering. Where? Her file says Tsuka. That's all we know. Victor paused. She left a note. For you. Jeff snatched it. Jeff, I don't belong in your world, and I won't let you destroy yourself trying to make space for me in it. I love you enough to walk away. Please don't follow me. Amanda. The paper shook in his hands. His breath came in short bursts. Everything else, money, power, pride, felt like ash in his mouth. He'd lost her, but not forever. He folded the note, tucked it into his wallet beside a faded childhood photo of his father, and walked out of the penthouse. He called Victor. Sell the shares? Pull out of the merger? What? Do what I said, and book a flight to Tsuka. I'm going home. Victor blinked. Sir, what about the company? Jeff smiled, for the first time in days. It'll survive, but I won't if I don't get her back. Tsuka was quiet, not the kind of silence that came from peace, but the kind that hung in the air after heartbreak. Amanda Okoro stood by the firewood stove behind her mother's house, fanning the pot of boiling rice with distracted motions. She had barely spoken in days. Her mother, frail but sharp-eyed, sat on a stool nearby. You've been back for 2 weeks and still haven't told me what happened in Lagos. Amanda forced a smile. Nothing to talk about, Mama. Don't lie to your mother, the woman said firmly. You came back with tired eyes and a heart-leaking sadness. Amanda swallowed hard. He was kind, but he belongs to a world I was never meant to enter. Her mother hummed, stirring her tea. Then why does it feel like you left something behind you still carry? Amanda couldn't answer. That evening, the village kids ran toward the house, shouting, a big car is coming. It's not from here. Amanda stepped outside and froze. A sleek, black SUV rolled slowly down the dusty road. It stopped right in front of their compound. The door opened. Jeff Obasi stepped out, wearing jeans and a plain white shirt. No security, no flash. Just him, holding a travel bag in one hand, and a bouquet of white hibiscus in the other. Amanda's heart stopped. He walked slowly toward her, the entire village watching from a respectful distance. Amanda, he said gently, I told you I wouldn't stop until you believed it. She was frozen. What are you doing here? I'm here, he said, voice cracking slightly, because I chose you. Not the company, not the merger, not the money. You gave it all up. Yes. And it was the easiest decision I've ever made. She shook her head. You didn't have to. I did, he said, because you are not a detour. You are my destination. Amanda took a shaky step forward. You don't belong here. Maybe not, Jeff whispered, but I belong with you. A long pause. Then she dropped the fan in her hand and ran straight into his arms. The bouquet fell to the dust, forgotten, because in that moment, nothing else mattered. 1 year later, the ribbon was red. The scissors were golden. The crowd clapped as Amanda Okoro cut the ribbon to Okoro Women's Health Center, her white coat shining under the sun. She looked to her right. Jeff stood there, clapping with pride, holding their 6-month-old daughter in his arms. She had Amanda's curious eyes and Jeff's determined frown. They had named her Ifunanya, love. After Jeff left the Obasi board, he handed control of the empire to his trusted younger sister. He didn't disappear completely, but he chose a quieter path. Real estate development in rural communities. Starting with Tsuka, he and Amanda built not only a health clinic but also a life. A love born from mistake, refined by fire, and sealed by truth. Later that night, as they lay together under the stars outside their new bungalow, Amanda whispered, Do you ever miss it? Jeff turned to her, brushing her cheek. I thought I wanted the world, but it was empty without you in it. She smiled, resting her head on his chest. I never thought someone like you could love someone like me. He kissed her forehead. Someone like me never knew what love was. Until you. And as the crickets sang and the moon watched over them, the once scandalous Maid and the runaway billionaire finally found what neither had ever truly known. Home. True love is not defined by status, wealth, or background. It is rooted in honesty, sacrifice, and connection. Despite their vastly different worlds, Jeff and Amanda's bond grew from sincerity and emotional truth, not luxury or physical attraction. This reminds us that genuine love often comes from unexpected places. Self-worth is not determined by one's job or financial status. Amanda began as a hotel maid, often overlooked and underestimated. Yet she carried values of strength, dignity, and compassion that changed Jeff's life. The story shows that no role is too small, and character always outshines class. Sacrifice is a sign of true love. Amanda walked away to protect Jeff's legacy. Jeff gave up his corporate empire to protect Amanda's heart. They both proved that love requires courage, not control, but the willingness to let go and still choose each other. Reputation means little without inner peace. Jeff had everything: money, fame, power, but was emotionally empty. It took walking away from the noise to find peace and purpose through love. Your happiness should not depend on the world's expectations. It's okay to walk away from what the world expects when your heart calls you elsewhere. Jeff rejected a powerful merger, a strategic engagement, and public opinion to pursue the life he truly wanted. Sometimes, the bravest decision is to follow your heart, even if it leads you off the expected path.